My name is Luke Diebold. I'm part of a group of web developers that build high-performance Vue apps in record time with a framework called Quasar. We don't spend months on designs that take years to test and end up confusing our customers. We use the material design spec because we already know that it works. Since we're community-driven, we have to be smarter than corporate frameworks. We do this by insisting on top-class web components, striving to use best practices, and pushing ourselves to raise the bar of what's possible on the web. Most component libraries do one thing and leave you to figure out the rest. We have a vision that is much, much bigger. An unparalleled experience building front-end apps that work on all platforms. We are Quasar developers, and there is nothing we can't build. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Quasar Show. I hope you enjoyed the first one. I've been waiting a long time for this. I'm super excited. We're going to be playing around. We're going to be experimenting. We're going to be exploring some parts of the docs that you may not have explored before. We're going to cover a couple of components that I'm particularly fond of that some of them that people don't even know exist. I really want to tell you what they are, but you're going to have to wait for that. We're going to be talking about architecture, building on stuff that we learnt about in the first episode of the Quasar Show. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the mindset behind being a developer and give you some sort of tips and tricks for focusing when you're a developer. And this will be useful for people that are new to the development world, but also people that feel like they're plateauing and want to know how to extend their knowledge beyond where they're currently at. You know, if you feel like you're at the intermediate level and you want to get to the more advanced level. So we're going to be talking about a lot of cool stuff today. So without further ado, let's move on to the news. Let's talk about some of the latest happenings in the Quasar and Vue community. All right. First up, we have the team. Let's have a little look at what's been happening on the team. I thought it would be nice just to give you guys an idea of some of the people that are working behind the scenes. And I'm going to miss a few people here simply because some people are quiet achievers, whereas I tend to be a little bit more connected with certain people on the team. So this is by no means all the people that are helping out in terms of behind the scenes with Quasar. So Razvan is moving us to Webpack 5. So we're currently on Webpack 4. He's working on moving us to Webpack 5 for Quasar version 2, which is exciting. Callow is working on TypeScript for PWAs with Yusuf. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right, Yusuf. TypeScript support for PWA, which is exciting, and all of the other TypeScript stuff that Callow works on. Bless him, what a legend. Alan is working on Quinn, and we're actually going to talk about that in a bit. By the way, Alan is the guy that created the BEX export option. So when you build for a BEX, which basically stands for browser extension, that's Alan. He's the brains behind that. And Jeff is working on finalizing the Q calendar component for Quasar version 2. Super, super exciting. That is like, I say this all the time, but that is the most exciting component, I believe, in the Quasar community. So super cool stuff. Quasar version 2, SSR. So SSR now has the concept of middleware. Middleware will be the same principle as boot files, but they only run on the server. So this basically allows you to very easily tap into Quasar's Express server behind the scenes when you're in SSR mode. So a couple of cool things to know about this. It will allow future TypeScript support. So as you'll notice, Quasar is doubling down on supporting TypeScript, but more on that in a bit. Hot module reload will work for SSR middleware when you're in development mode. That means changing these middleware files will not cause your server to reload all over again. So that's super cool. So TypeScript support and hot module reload support for middleware with Quasar SSR. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this in the last episode, but Quasar is now working with SSR. So the Vue fixes have been implemented, and now Quasar is able to move forward with SSR. Very exciting stuff. All right, Quinn. So Alan, who's part of the Quasar core team, I'd mentioned him before, he's working on a browser extension called Quinn. And by the way, Alan is a super cool guy. I've had the chance to chat with him a little bit behind the scenes. Really nice guy. So like I said before, BEX stands for browser extension. So what will Quinn do? Well, Quinn is a browser extension that will send you notifications with the latest happenings in the Quasar world. So if you're someone who likes to be up to date and on the cutting edge with Quasar release stuff, all that kind of stuff, get excited because the release of Quinn is just around the corner. I think this is a great idea, an easy way for you to get the latest news and digest it quickly. Quasarcast videos. Thought I'd just give you a quick rundown of what I'm doing in terms of videos for Quasarcast. I'm doing a Getting Started series, which is a little bit more of an in-depth Getting Started series, and also a wrapper component series. So I'm probably just going to focus on the Getting Starting series for now. But I wanted to have something more advanced in the works. So for those of you that want to sort of dive a little bit deeper, the wrapper component series is also under development. All right, so the Quasar Podcast. Quasar now has 3 podcasts that will be out soon. We currently have the Quasar Life podcast, which is just me talking about building Quasar code in the real world. So that's this one on the left here. You can go to quasarcast.com/podcast so to get the latest of to see whether or not these have been released. So there's the Quasar Life podcast, Quasar News podcast, where I'm basically just going to cover the latest news, and this will probably be like a 5 to 10 podcast. I don't know if it'll be weekly or bi-weekly. We'll decide on that in a bit. And the Quasar Devs podcast. Now, this is what I'm most excited about. This will be an opportunity to talk to people in the Quasar community, people that have been building stuff, people that are working on making the framework better, people who build extensions for Quasar. And it's going to be like an interview style podcast where I can talk to people in the Quasar world. And it might not necessarily even be me. It might be like a couple of people in the Quasar world having a chat about Quasar stuff. So very, very exciting stuff. I'm super excited for all of this. What else? Now, we've got the Vue ecosystem. So that's the Quasar ecosystem. Let's see what's the latest with Vue. Honestly, not a lot has happened since the last Quasar episode, but one of the big things is that basically we're going to be saying goodbye to IE 11 for Vue 3. Now, having said that, the way Vue's handling this, at least I think is pretty smart. Vue 2 is going to basically support the entire API of Vue 3. I don't know if it's supporting literally everything, but at least most of what Vue 3 will be able to do, Vue 2 will be able to do. Now, the idea is once the last version of Vue 2 is released, I think it's like 2.7 or 2.8, I can't remember, but basically that will still support IE 11. So if you're on Vue 2, you're going to have Vue 3 features and IE 11 support. So that means that if IE 11 is super important to you, then you can stay on Vue 2 and still get Vue 3 features, but Vue 3 itself is going to completely drop IE 11. And Evan did a talk on this, so you can look that up if you're interested in some of the reasons behind why that is. All right. By the way, just wanted to mention at the end of this video, check out quasarcast.com/register. If you enjoy these video style, if you enjoy the way I present, basically, because I do a whole bunch of videos where I basically teach you how to use Quasar. And we also cover like a couple of other frameworks as well in the process. But yeah, check out quasarcast.com/register to register your account. All totally free for now, but more on that later on in the show. Moving on to the next segment. Let's do something fun. So we're going to have a play around building something, wrapping components using the composition API. And in the process, I'm going to show you how to use props because the way you use props in the composition API is slightly different because we don't have this. We can't say this in order to get stuff that's inside of the context of the current component. And we're going to learn some really cool stuff along the way. It's going to be fun. All right, so I've got an app up and running here. And basically, this is a blank Quasar application. I've done a little bit of linting stuff. In fact, let me show you what I do for my linting. Usually, we've got Vue 3 Essentials. I disable that and use Vue 3 Recommended. And if you have your linter set up properly, it will also format things really nicely for you behind the scenes. So check out the docs for that if you want to make sure you get all that formatting magic. All right, cool. So first of all, we'll get rid of the image and leave a comment there. And what I want to do is we're going to have an input component that might look something like this. Let's do the API first. Crop, how about area input? All right, so this is like inputting the area of a crop. And notice that I use for the last word input, which means we're going to use Quasar's input component. That's how I like to name things. And then let's say crop, how about tons input? So we're going to input the area and input the tons. And when we input the tons, we're actually going to pass through the area. All right, like this. So we'll be modeling the area there. So it'll probably look more like this, crop.area. And then by doing that, we'll be able to see the yield as we enter in the tons, which basically allows the farmers to have a bit of feedback. So whilst they enter their tons, they can be like, oh, cool, that's what my yield is. And that's just a really nice user experience for them. All right, so in fact, we can go ahead and uncomment that out now. Crop area input. I might move myself over here, and hopefully that all works all right. Quasar, new component, crop area input. And let's go ahead and create the other one while we're at it. Quasar, new component, crop tons input. Cool. I'm just going to throw myself back over there. All right, so we can enable that one as well. And let's just start off by modeling some data here. V-model is equal to, and how about we have a crop object, and then how about we say tons on that crop object? And then we can say v-model, and how about we say crop.area? Yeah. All right, so now what we'll do is we'll pull out a reference from Vue. We'll have set up because we're using the composition API because we're cool cats. And then we'll have a reference to an object, and it's going to have, what did we have again? Area and tons. Boom, whack them in there. That will be 0 by default, and that will be 0. In fact, let's make it null. That probably makes a little bit more sense. Tremendous, and now we actually want to return that. Let's actually set it to something. Const crop is equal to that reference, and then we will return that crop so that it is exposed. Refresh the page. Let's see if that's working. All right, so now we actually need to import these two components. And we can do that by saying, by the way, if I go shift, let me just show you what I'm doing here. If I double click on there, hold alt and then double click on there, notice that they're both selected. So now I can copy that, and it's copied them in a special way. So it's copied this selection and this selection as sort of like two separate copies. That means I can do this, ready? Shift alt, and then I press the down button. And now I can say import, and it types in both those places at once. And then I can directly paste that in there, the two things that I just copied. And I'm going to import them from components / and then once again, the name of that.view. Now, once again, I alt click to copy them. And then we can say our components is equal to, and then just paste it directly in there. And because of my linter, when I save this, everything formats nicely. So there's some like code tricks that I'm doing behind the scenes in my editor. All right, so there we go. We've got our base components that currently do nothing. They are dumb components. So let's go into the crop area component, and we will say q-input. And I think we'll literally just leave it at that for now. Get out of that. And now let's jump into the crop tons component. There it is there. And the same dealio, where we're just going to have an input. Right, now I want to change the formatting so this looks nicer. Instead of having flex, I'm going to set that equal to a column. There we go. And then I can say class is equal to q-margin top large, but I've accidentally put that on the wrong component. So let's throw it in there. Next, I want to actually see the data that I'm working with. So let's go ahead and spit it out here. So we'll spit out the crop underneath in a pre-tag, and I'm going to copy that styling and throw it in there. All right, cool. This is something we can work with. So basically, we're wrapping a crop area input. So this is currently just wrapping an input component, and this is also currently just wrapping an input component. Now let's add a label here, and we'll set that to crop area. And how about we set the label on this one equal to crop tons, or maybe even grain tons. Let's just imagine that this is grain. And I like to do a little bit of styling just to keep things fresh. Let's say filled. There we go, just to like style things a little bit differently. Okay, so if I jump into this crop tons component now, the other thing we were going to do is pass through the area, and that is going to be equal to the crop's area, like that. All right. By the way, another quick trick. I do this all the time. I want to grab the text area, so I just double click, copy, and then I double click there and pasted it in. All right. Just a really easy way to do things. Sometimes I see things like tons and I just want to grab it. So I go double click, copy, and then just paste it wherever I like. All right. So there we go. What next? Let's actually build out this crop tons component now. So we'll dive into it. And how's this going to work? All right, so I want to show the yield in the top right over here. And it just so happens that if you put something into an input, I didn't actually know this till recently. If I put some text in here, check this out. Notice that it actually shows up in the right side like that, which I think is really cool. And now we can just say, for example, yield, and then whatever the yield is going to be. In fact, I'll probably put that inside of a span so that we can toggle it on and off based on whether or not we have data to show there. All right, so we got the crop area, we got the grain tons. Next thing I want to do is ensure that they're both numbers. So let's come here and say dot number. Nice, that just means that the data I'm modeling here is going to be a number and not a string. So that's going to be important so that we can do a calculation on it. All right, so crop, let's go back in here. We're now inside of this component. And here comes the part where I get to teach you something new. So we used to be able to deal with props in Vue by saying this dot and then the name of the prop. And you still can do that when you're using the options API, but when you're using setup, this doesn't even exist yet. So I can't say console.log this. That's not going to work. Notice that I get undefined because this doesn't exist yet. So what we actually can do is pull out the props directly from setup. So check this out. We actually get a proxy there. So what I'll have to do is actually accept the props first. Sorry, I got a little bit ahead of myself. And how about we accept the area required is equal to false. Let's set that to a number. And then the default will be equal to null. And now if I console.log props.area, notice that it's going to be null by default, but if we had an area in there, it would then show up with the area. All right, so now we can have a play around with these props. So the next thing I want to do is say model value, because in the old Vue, we used to just have value. If you wanted to grab the value, you could just pull the value like that, but now it's been changed to model value. We've talked about that in the past. And now I can do this. I can say required true. We definitely need to have a value there. Type, number, and I'll just set the default to null by default. Well, really, you can't actually have a default because it's required. And there we go. I'm going to set required defaults and actually set default equal to null. Yeah, just to deal with some errors that I haven't quite figured out yet. But anyway, that's for another video. Now, when you receive the model value as a property, if I type in here, it's no longer going to model it correctly anymore. Because when we say model value and we accept that prop, we're basically saying, I'm taking responsibility for that prop now. So that means that we need to pass this property back through to the input by saying model value is equal to the model value that we have from the prop. All right, so that will now start working again. Or will it not? Okay, I'm also going to have to say v-bind is equal to adders, and we've talked about this pattern in the past as well. And there we go. Sorry about these errors. I've probably done something wrong here, but that's all right. It looks like it's working for now. So next, we want to have a computed property. So I'm going to say here, import computed, and that's going to be from Vue. And this is going to basically be our yield. So now I can say const, and I can't use the word yield because that's actually a reserved word. So I'm going to say, how about grain yield is equal to, and then we'll say computed. That's going to accept a function. And then if we have props.model value and, that should be props. If we have a model value and we have an area, so let's wrap that in an if statement. Sometimes I code backwards. then we're going to go ahead and perform this calculation. Otherwise, we'll return null there. And that basically means that I can say here, only show this if we actually have a grain yield. And then we'll spit out the grain yield. Cool. Next, we're going to want to expose that and finish writing this logic here. So if we have a model value and an area, basically, we want to say that the model value, so the tons in this case, because this is the crop tons, divided by the area is what we will be returning. And that's going to give us the yield. All right, so that should work now. Let's put in, for example, 800 as the area. And let's say we pulled in from that 1,200 tons. There we go. It shows us the yield as we type in there. All right, so that's how you can accept props within the composition API and start using them. So I know I went pretty fast in this video and you might have missed some bits and pieces, but this is what I wanted to teach. If you add props here in the setup method, you can then start using those props within your component. In order to wrap a component correctly, you have to say v-bind is equal to adders. And that's basically a way of proxying the attributes. In fact, let me show you this properly. Full screen here. And if we go to index.view, that's basically a way of saying, hey, take all of the stuff here and paste it in there. There's a little bit more to it than that. Okay, so this handles like things like listeners and slots as well in Vue 3. But it's basically like saying, hey, I want this component to be, I want to be able to throw anything into this component and have it proxied down into this component here. All right, so hopefully if that made sense. If it didn't, that's totally fine. I know that I have actually gone quite fast in this section. So, woo! We covered quite a bit in this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Let's move on to the next segment. Check this out. This is a really cool project built using Quasar by a guy called Sacramentix. I don't know what his real name is. Sacramentix. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. But anyway, check it out. By the way, just the art in this is amazing. Let me refresh the page. How cool is that? This guy's got some serious CSS skills. All right, so this is the Wiki adventure game. And basically the idea is you have a Wiki page you start on and one that you end on. And a lot of my friends used to play this at school. And so what you'd have to do then is you have your start page and you have to keep clicking on links and try and end up on the end page. Now, I've never won this game. In fact, I don't think I've ever done it successfully before, so maybe this would be a good opportunity for me to learn. But anyway, let me show you how it works. We can say public party here. Very beautiful interface. We can select the language, and I'm going to generate a random one for my username, or I could say like Luke Cool, because my name is Luke, and I am cool. And I'll leave the party ID blank, and I think that'll create a blank party. Yeah, here we go. So now we've got the main menu and you can vote for the page that you want to start on. So like Harry Potter, for example. All built with Quasar. Really, really cool. And then when the voting is done, so in fact, let's see if I can do this. I'm going to copy that, paste this in a new tab. And then this, I think, is the ID. So I'm going to copy that last bit there and then go to public party. And let's try and join using that ID. And this can be Luke 2.0. I don't know if that username will be all right. Yeah. Oh, there we go. So now there's two people in the party and we can even message each other. So like, hey man, send that through. Oop, and I get a little sound. And there we go. I got that message. We've got a scoreboard and we can come back here to, we got settings. We can go into full screen and out of full screen, safe mode. What's this? We'll blur image of Wikipedia. You can okay, interesting. Yeah, and so let's come back here. And I just want to show you what it actually looks like to use the app. How do I go back to the settings page? Yeah, that's here. So when the voting is over, then we actually get to start playing. So let's try putting these side by side. Ooh, it's got a little countdown. End of page is Haldane effect. So I need to try and then get to that final page by like clicking through the different links, right? And if I end up on that page, then I am the winner. How cool is this idea? This guy's basically built the entire concept in such a way that you can do it and verse people in your browser. And he's even got all these other modes that have been created, like if I just go back into the app again here, you can even have like a private party if you just want to like play with your friends. And if it's even got like this little Twitch feature where you can create like a Twitch party. So super cool. What's it called? Wiki Adventure. So check out Wiki Adventure. And if you play around with it and you enjoy it and mess around with it with your friends, then check out the donation section of this website as well and donate. We want to become people that donate in the Quasar community, donating to applications that we love and use, and of course, donating to the framework as well. So a massive thank you to Sacramentix. Sacramentix, we'll have to find out your real name and attribute you properly, but awesome app, and I'll see you guys in the next segment. Nice. One of the things that's really surprised me where I work is how impressed people are with the little things and how excited they get about the little things. And the cool thing about Quasar is that it makes these little things so easy to implement. I'll give you an example. So I work for an agriculture company, and we have little filter options for different paddocks. And so users can turn paddocks on and off. And one of the things we introduced is simply colors to those paddocks so that users can easily identify the different colors for those paddocks. And so we got these little Q-chip components, and they can turn them on and off, and it will add like a tick or a cross depending on whether or not it's been selected. And they absolutely love this. They love that there's those little extra details of color. And then we started like adding little icons for like different crop types and different select menus here and there. And they just lap it up. They think it's so cool. And it's virtually no work on my end because Quasar makes this so simple to do. And so I thought, hey, you know what? How about for the Quasar show today, we do a simple select component, which is going to be where you can select different video providers. And I'm going to show you how to jazz up that component really simply using Quasar. And along the way, I'm going to make a few design mistakes so that I can teach you how you can clean up common design mistakes in your code and end up with something that looks beautiful and is also easy to manage in the future. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start working on the video provider component. All right, so I've got a basic Quasar app up and running here. We're going to get rid of the image in the center. Goodbye, image. And now I'm going to add a Q-options. No, what is it? Q-select component. There we go. And we'll add in some options here. And to begin with, I think I might just hard code YouTube. What else? Vimeo. And we'll do Wistia as well. There we go. So naturally, that's going to be very small because we've got flex and flex center. So I'm just going to jimmy in some styling. Let's say width is equal to, 180 pixels, something like that. And there we go. So now let's also make this outlined. Yeah, I like that design. And let's see if it works. We've got the options. Now we just need to model some data. So let's say v-model is equal to selected option. And now we can come down here. We'll pull out ref from view, and then we'll add setup. Set up. And there we go. And now we can return an object, and we want it to have selected options. So let's say const selected option is equal to a reference to null by default. Save that, refresh the page just to check we don't get any console errors, and we don't. And there we go. We're modeling different select options there. However, let's make this a little bit prettier. And what I'm about to do should be a code smell to you. If it's not, that's totally fine if you're a beginner. But a lot of you more advanced users, watch closely here because I'm going to do something bad. I shouldn't say bad. I mean, honestly, it depends on how you like to code at the end of the day. But let's say const, and we'll say providers is equal to, how about this const color? So we'll start off by trying to change the color depending on what's selected. So if it's YouTube, it'll have like a red color. Vimeo will have a light blue color. And we're going to set that equal to our computed property. So let's go ahead and use computed here. There we go. And then we can now say if the selected option dot value is equal to YouTube, then we'll return red. So let's have a crack at that. Now we'll return here the color, and then how about we say return gray if it's not set to YouTube. So now, we actually have to use the color. So let's copy that, scroll to the top, and we will give this a color equal to whatever the current color is. And there we go. If it's on YouTube, it's red. We get that sort of red feel. And if it's Vimeo or Wistia, it's gray because we haven't set those up yet. So, and hopefully you're starting to see the code smell here. I'm going to copy that if statement and paste it, and then paste it again. If you're pasting a lot of code, something is up. Vimeo, and let's change this one to Wistia. So if it's Vimeo or Wistia, we're going to make it a light blue color because they both kind of have like a light blue color for their logo. I'm going to do a refresh. Vimeo is now showing up blue. That's kind of cool. And Wistia is also working. Nice. So it's functional. But let's just say we also want to change the icon as well. Well, I'm going to copy paste that. Once again, copy pasting is a bad sign. It means that you probably need to do things a little bit smarter. Not always, but sometimes. And if it's YouTube, I'm going to say MDI-YouTube. So I'm using a different icon set here. If I go to quasar.conf, notice that I've enabled MDI version 5. I like that icon set because there's a lot of icons available to me. And I just enjoy the extra flexibility. So let's make that icon variable exposed. And if it's YouTube, we're going to use the YouTube icon. If it's Vimeo, we'll say MDI-Vimeo. And for Wistia, there's no icon for that, so we'll say MDI-alpha-W, which just gives us like a W, gives us the letter W. And then by default, how about we say MDI-video? Now we need to actually use that icon. So I'll come up here, and we can do that like so. We'll insert a template in here. And that is going to be, what is it? I believe it's called, how about we say before? So this icon's going to show before the select input. Or prepend might be better. That means it's going to be inside of the input itself. So q-icon, and this is going to have a name equal to the icon that it currently is set to. So now if we go Vimeo or YouTube, etc., it changes the icon. And hey, while we're at it, how about we change the color of the icon equal to the current color? And there we go. I think that's a really nice experience. So if I were a user using this component, I just get a nice feeling like this app cares about my experience. You know what I mean? Like it just kind of feels nice to change this selection here. Next thing I'll do is make it clearable, so it's easier to play around with. So now notice that we get this little clear icon, so we can easily select that to bring us back to null. And there we go. Now, let's refactor this so that's a little bit nicer to use. And I'm going to show you how I would do that. First of all of these if statements, that's the code smell to me. It's not cool when you've got a whole ton of if statements. So what if I could have, ultimately, I'd love to have something like this, const video providers, and then just have an object, and then we could say, for example, YouTube, and then that's got a label equal to YouTube. Or honestly, you probably wouldn't need the label in this example because you could just use the key. I don't know, depends on what you like. But how about like icon is equal to MDI-YouTube, and then color is equal to red, and then you could just add in providers like this. Vimeo, MDI, Vimeo, and then the color would be equal to light blue. Like to me, that's a really nice experience now. You just add in new providers as you need them. So let's go ahead and add the last one and see how we can start and see how we can basically implement this new way of doing things. So YouTube, Vimeo, Wistia, MDI, and I believe we just said video for that. Color is also light blue. Now, first of all, instead of having the options menu hard-coded, what we could do now, check this out. We could say object.keys. We could use the video provider's object we just created, and all of its keys are going to be equal to the selected option. So now check this out. We now need to expose this. So I'll come down here, video providers, and there we go. So now these options, they're actually being pulled from the keys here. All right, so that's a good start. Next, how about we try and deal with the color? So what I could do instead is say, we probably want to know what the selected provider is. So how about this? We have a computed property that tells us const selected provider is equal to computed. And have we got computed? Yep, we do. And then we can say here, we need to send that in a function. And we can say the video provider, and then the selected option. So what we could do is this. Selected option dot value. That's going to give us, for example, YouTube. And then we can say video providers, and then used that selected option. And what that means is if YouTube is selected, we're going to end up with this object as the selected provider. So how about we return that? But we'll also want to be able to deal with the scenario where we don't have a selected provider. So how about we come up here and we say blank. So that basically means there's no option. We'll set the icon to a video icon, and then the color equal to gray. So that's what it will be if it's blank. And then we can say if there is no selected option, so if the selected option is set to null, or basically nothing, then we'll return video providers dot blank. All right, so now what I can do is return here the selected provider. So this is going to be a computed property that gives us the selected provider. I know this might be a little bit advanced for some of you out there, but you can always go back and watch this again. So now for the color, I can actually say selected provider dot color. We can do it here as well. Selected provider dot color. Selected provider dot icon. And I believe that'll work. What have we got wrong here? We'll have to return that here. All right, so let's refresh the page and see if this works now. All right, video providers is not a function, so why is that happening? Oh, I'm calling that as a function. Really, I just want to pull the key out. So let's do that and try it again. And it's working. How cool is that? Now check this out. I can remove all of this color code. I can remove all of this icon code. Did I do that right? Oh, there you go. So get rid of this as well. Get rid of that as well. So get rid of all of the color and icon code. We don't need them here anymore. And everything is a lot cleaner, but it still works. Now, the last thing we need to do is remove this blank option, which is showing up. And I'm just going to do a quick and dirty way to solve that problem by simply saying here, dot filter, pull out the current provider, and if the provider just the provider is equal to blank, we basically want to say if it is not equal to blank. So filter out all the providers Oh, wait, we want to say if the provider, if the provider is not equal to blank. So let's refresh the page and it doesn't show up anymore. How cool is that? Now, what's cool about this also is that if everything looks a little bit nicer in this component, and if I want to add in a new provider, let's just say there's a new platform that comes out called Beep. I can simply say Beep there. MDI video is the icon. And maybe it's got like a wacky sort of purple design. And now there we go. We've got the new Beep provider. And it works. How cool is that? So, really awesome that we can do that really simply using Quasar. And the big pattern that I wanted to show you in that video is if you're using if statements over and over again, it might be time to basically create an object, an object so that you can easily start retrieving that data rather than running an if check over and over and over again. So hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next section. Some components are kind of like quiet achievers where they've got a whole lot of value, but a lot of people don't really know about them or they don't know how to use them in the right context. And a classic example of that is the Q avatar component. It's super cool, but a little bit difficult to explain. So I figured, hey, let's do a video dedicated or a section of this show dedicated to the Q avatar component. So check this out. First of all, I've got an image up here, which is just a picture of myself, because I know that the copyright is fine for that image, which we're going to use throughout this video. Let's start by just saying Q-avatar and take a look at what we get by default. So I'll have to give it an icon, for example. So how about we say person icon? I think we have a person icon. There we go. It doesn't look like much yet. But if we add, for example, a color here, and let's say blue for the color, notice that by default, it has got a round feel to it. And another thing that we can do is say text-color, and let's set that to white. And there we go. And we can also change the size of it. So we could say size is equal to medium. We've got extra small. We've got large, basically all your classic sizes. But then you can do stuff like 7EM. Or even add in pixels like 22 pixels. So there we go. That's kind of like a basic overview of the avatar component. But let's have a look at what it can really do. So I might come down here and then do another version of this. But this time, let's get rid of all of that and simply have an image in there. So I'll say here, image, and then we'll set the source equal to that image. And I'll just get rid of the alt for now. And there we go. Straight away, it makes a circular image that is really good for situations like having that little logout button in the top right of your application. And it just sits nicely in different areas of your app. So let me give you some more examples of where you might actually use this. In fact, it's almost always used within other components. So what else? Well, we've got the Q-chip component. This is a really cool example of using avatars. Let's throw that image back in again. And then we can say Luke Diebold, because that's my name. Oh, and that's giving us something weird. That's because I threw the image in, but I didn't make it an avatar. So notice that if I don't use Q avatar, I get this weird result, this massive image, but then, this tiny section of the chip, which doesn't work out right. So let's use it as an avatar this time. And notice that it just sits nicely within there. Really, really cool. So you can imagine if you've got like a whole bunch of people that you want to be able to select on and off with a chip, or you just want to display them with chips, this is a really good way to do it. So there we go, using it within the Q chip component. Another great example is a Q-button component. So let's once again just whack it directly in there. And now notice that by default, we've got kind of a weird looking button because of the square edges that you get with a button. All I have to do now is say rounded to round off that button, or say round. And there we go. Notice that it just automatically sits very nicely within that button. We didn't have to do any weird stuff. If I just threw the image directly in there, once again, this is what happens. We get this big weird button that doesn't work properly. So that's another situation where a queue avatar is super handy. What else have we got? Oh, queue item. This is one of the best examples. I'm going to comment these out for now. Whoop, that didn't work properly. Let's come up and try that again. And there we go. So if we have a queue item, queue-item-section, this is particularly good if you want to show like a list of contacts, or maybe like a list of people within your organization and some information about the people within the organization. So we've got an item section here, and let's add the word side in, because this is going to be an item that will be displayed on the side. And now let's throw that avatar in there, and then we'll add another queue-item-section, and this one is going to be the name. So I'll just say Luke Diebold in this example. And there we go. To display this a bit better, I might add, how about, instead of queue item, let's wrap that in a list. Control-Shift-Enter, queue-list. So there we go. Now that's sitting in a list, and we can say here, clickable, just so it's a bit easier to see. And there we go. And as you can imagine, you'd probably have other people within this list. So it would look something like this. All the people showing up in the list, and you can add like some more information there if you'd like. So I think that's really cool. I'll give you one last example of where you might use this. So let's come up and delete all of that. Queue-banner. And I'm going to take this directly from the docs because I have a great example for this in the docs. So if I come here and I say template, we've actually got a template within the banner component. Actually, I'll comment that out for now and put in, for example, Wi-Fi signal lost, just to show you what this looks like. We'll give it a class with a background of primary and a text of white. So there we go. And we'll give it full width as well. Yeah, so that's just like a classic banner component. And where the avatar comes in handy here is basically showing a little bit more context to this banner. So we could say template, and it's actually got a avatar template, an avatar slot, and then we can once again just copy paste this in here. You wouldn't really have an image though, so instead of copy pasting it, let's say queue-avatar, and we can just straight out give it an icon of signal Wi-Fi off. I'm just copying this directly from the docs. So there, once again, the avatar allows this to just sit in perfectly within its context. So that is the queue avatar component. I highly recommend you use it where it makes sense in your app rather than trying to do this stuff from scratch. It just makes things a lot easier to use. And oh, by the way, I actually use it. Let me just come back to the code here. I actually use this component all of the time in a queue dash button. So if you're logged into my website on quasarcast.com, by the way, go to quasarcast.com/register, shameless plug. If we have a button here and we say round, and then we say, for example, queue-avatar, and then we give that a letter. So if you're logged in and your name is Luke Diebold, which is my name, then I would just grab that first letter, which is, L in this case, and that would be a menu in the top right of my application. And that's where you'd get your menu that has, for example, stuff like log out. I think that's all that it has for now. But, you could have account settings and all that kind of stuff sitting within that menu. And then you could easily just change the color here to something like, I don't know, primary. And it just works really, really well. And yeah, you probably have a menu, for example, queue-menu, queue-item dash. You could probably just do a queue-item and say log out. Let's see if that works. Yeah, I haven't done that properly. You'd have to have like item sections and do this. Let's just do it. Queue dash, what is it? Menu? No, not menu. Oh, I'm blanking now. What is it when you have a list? Oh, queue dash list. Queue dash list, and then a queue dash item, and then I think you'd have to have like a queue dash item dash section. And there we go. Just another example of where you can use the Q avatar. So, hope you found this one useful. Check out the Q avatar in the docs for a few more examples, and I'll see you in the next section. This next component might just blow your mind, especially if you're building web applications where you want the user to have a lot of control over the interface. Actually, this is great for Electron or desktop apps where you want the user to be able to move the interface around and meld it to exactly how they like it. And some of you might have guessed it already, but for those of you that haven't, I'm talking about the Q splitter component. If you haven't heard of it, check this out. It might just blow your mind. All right, so let's start by adding in the component by saying Q-splitter. And we are going to have to model some data here, which is simply going to be the ratio in which the splitter is set to. So if I come over here now and I say ref, and then we can say, how about const ratio is equal to a reference, and we'll set that to 30 by default, which basically means that we'll see 30% of it showing on the left and then the rest showing on the right. I'll show you what I mean. So we can now return that ratio, and it's being modeled here. So let's refresh the page and see if that works. Oh, and then of course we need to actually have content for the left and right side. So let's say here template, and this first one is going to be for before. Before basically means left in this scenario. And then we'll add another one that says after. And to get us started, I'm going to just add in a little bit of lorem ipsum. So some fake text there, save that. And there we go. Notice that we've got 30% on the left here, and that's because we set it to 30%. And if I were to set that to 70%, then notice that it's now taking up more on the left side. But check this out. Bring that back to 30. We can actually grab this and move it around. So we have total flexibility over our interface now. So another thing to note here is I'm probably going to want to make this full width. Class is equal to full width. If I don't do that and there's not a lot of content, then it's not going to show correctly. So there we go. That is the Q splitter component. Now, let me show you a scenario where I use this component and where we found it particularly helpful. So we, as a lot of you may know, I work for an agriculture company, and we have it so that after the client has entered their data and we've helped them validate their data, they can actually show a whole list of cards that give them information about their crops. And we can even show them aggregated data that displays information about those crops. Now, because there is a lot of data that is going to be on each of those cards, you know, they could end up having up to 30 fields showing on one card, whereas they might only care about the paddock area, for example. So what we do is we have it so that on the left, we use the Q tree component to display all of the different fields that they can select. And then on the right, we show those cards. So let me just give you a basic idea. Obviously, I'm not going to build the whole thing out, but I'll give you a basic idea of what this could look like. So we could have in here a Q card, and we'll have a bunch of them. So let's say v-4, and we'll say num, or I might just say I in, and then we'll have an array. Something like that. And then we can go ahead and set the key here equal to I. This is just a quick way to basically render a whole bunch of cards. And then Q-card-section, and then we'll throw some lorem ipsum in there. Now, you know what? Let's do something a little bit more realistic. Q-list, and then Q-item, and then Q-item-section. And then this would represent a field. So let's just call this field A, for example. And there we go. And then we'll add another field just to make this example a bit fuller. Field B, and then field C. So these might be like paddock area, the type of crop, that kind of thing. So save that. And then to display this a little bit more nice, I'll say class is equal to Q-margin, or I don't know, maybe medium. And let's see what that looks like. Cool. So that's an example of what the cards might look like on the right side. And then we've got it so that you could have like a few cards, and you know it's all displayed nicely so that you could have multiple columns of cards as well. But anyway, this is just an example. Another thing we could do now, and what we did do, is have a Q-option group. We actually use the Q tree component, but the option group allows me to show you this very quickly. And now we could say the options is equal to, and let's have an array of different options. And you might have a value that is equal to something like paddock area. So we might have a field called paddock area that would show up in the card here. And then a label, and then let's just say paddock area for the label. Let's see if that's just going to work to begin with. What have I done? Oh, we need a comma there. And there we go. We might change that to a checkbox. Yeah, so I'm not modeling data, so we're going to get a few errors here, but this is just an example of what the display might look like. So you might have one for paddock area, you might have one for the crop type. So we might say here, for example, crop, and then this could be equal to current crop is what we call it in the database. And then you could say, for example, hey, I want to know what the prior crop was for that prior crop, and then say here, prior crop. And you get the idea. So now the user is able to toggle these on and off and have the fields on the right side reflect that. And then they can also easily resize this so that they can create a little bit more room for themselves. So this is a super cool component. There's a few more features, but you can go to the docs and check that out if you like. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next section where we're going to explore some more cool Quasar-related stuff. One of the banes of my existence has been dealing with WYSIWYG editors on the web. So almost all of them have the default functionality, but then you find the one that you really want, but you can't use video in it, or it's too difficult to add an image. And so you look for another one, and some claim to be simple, but they're not, and they're impossible to extend. And so this like corner feature you want to use, you can't. Anyway, it's just so frustrating finding the right WYSIWYG editor. And by the way, WYSIWYG means what you see is what you get. And Quasar comes with one out of the box, which is awesome. However, there's another type of WYSIWYG editor that I want to show you in this video. So first, we've got this WYSIWYG editor called Prose Mirror. And this is really cool because it's got a lot of features by default. However, if you want to dig into the core, it's actually not too difficult to dig in and get a little bit more flexibility if that's the kind of thing that you need. So super cool, Prose Mirror. Now somebody came along and built TipTap, and TipTap is basically Prose Mirror, but using Vue. So it's a Prose Mirror wrapper for Vue.js, and it's really cool. It's got a whole bunch of really awesome functionality out of the box. You can export it as HTML or JSON. That's one of the huge benefits, that you can export things as JSON, which is super, super handy, especially if you want to have like a blog creation tool where you can then like spit out all of the data exactly how you want to spit it out. So that's really cool. However, turning TipTap into something that works with Quasar is not that straightforward, because you basically have to start trying to integrate all of the Quasar components with TipTap. However, somebody came along and actually did this. There is a Quasar TipTap, and this is like a WYSIWYG editor built for Quasar on steroids. It is incredible. Check this out. So you've got all of your default features, and it works with Quasar out of the box. So you can come like down here, and let's just add, I don't know, let's put some text in here, my text. Really basic, straightforward stuff. You can get this little like menu that shows up here. This is all free. I cannot believe how awesome this is. Another thing though that you can do is add videos, and this is one of the features I always need that is never available. So let's just create a new line here, and if I click on the plus button here, it's all in I think that's Chinese, but obviously you can make it English as well. That's not too difficult. But if we come down to this section here, notice that the creator has showed you a whole bunch of examples of integrations. So you can even integrate Canva, you can integrate YouTube videos, and the YouTube video integration is awesome. So here's an example of one here, and you can just hover over it and you get this menu here where you can change the YouTube URL. So I can just paste it directly in here, all right, and then click down there, and then that is done. I think that might mean save. Yeah, there we go, and that's done. And then you can come up here and you've got like delete buttons and all that kind of stuff. So cool. So if you need that extra functionality in a WYSIWYG editor, and if you want something that does all of this for you out of the box, then definitely check out Quasar TipTap. I've used it in some of my projects, like I said, especially for like having an editor where users can create their own content. It is awesome. Hands down, the best WYSIWYG editor I've ever seen. However, having said that, always make sure like you check out the native Quasar stuff first, because it's likely to be slightly more stable. And it's, you know, it's built by the creator of Quasar, Razvan, and so he understands what he's doing. Always check that that's got the features that you need. However, if you want something quick and easy to get like video, image uploads and all that kind of stuff working a bit more, that's got an API that's a little bit sort of already built for you, then check out Quasar TipTap. And the reason I'm stumbling over my words here is because the Quasar WYSIWYG editor it probably does most of the stuff that TipTap gives you available for free. However, there are some extra things, like I mentioned, like adding videos that TipTap is especially awesome for. So check out Quasar TipTap. I just wanted to showcase that. And yeah, I'll see you in the next section. Nice. Razvan has introduced middleware to SSR, and this is super exciting. So for those of you that have a lot of experience with Express, you're going to love this, because you can sort of like very easily dig into Express and start extending it kind of like you would a boot file. But for those of you that don't really have a lot of experience with Express, I'm going to show you a middleware that will still be helpful for you if you're building SSR applications. And if you don't know what SSR is, it's server-side rendered. Just come along for the ride, enjoy it, and maybe you can check it out at a later date. It's especially useful if you want to have good SEO in your applications out of the box. So, right, let's go ahead and have a look at building a middleware using an SSR application. So I've just got a blank SSR app here. Let's go ahead and run Quasar dev, and we'll set the mode equal to SSR. That's going to get that running, and then it will show up on the left here. And the next thing we want to do then is create SSR middleware. And to do that, we can say Quasar new SSR middleware. And then we can put in a name for our middleware. In this case, we'll call it a logger. So this middleware is basically going to allow us to have a log file showing requests that we've gotten from the user. And we're actually going to use an Express middleware in order to get it working. Cool. All right. So looks like this is working. And notice that we do get like a little bit of a log here that we get by default. So now if we come into logger.js, we're going to go ahead and build this logger. So I might hide that so we have some more space. What else? We can probably get rid of a lot of this up here. And what are we going to need? We'll need app. And we might also need resolve. So I'm going to include that. Cool. Now we're going to use a package called Morgan. Morgan is an Express package that allows you to do really nice logging in your application. So we'll say const Morgan is equal to require Morgan. And now we're going to actually install that. So let's say yarn add Morgan. And there we go. We can keep writing code while that installs. Now we'll say const fs, because we're going to need to access the file system, require fs. The next thing we want is path, so that we can resolve paths really easily. And we'll set that equal to path. Now, next we want to create a write stream. And I'm stealing a bit of this from the documentation on Express for the Morgan package. And we want to do this in append mode. So basically, we want to access a file and make it so that we can continually append lines to that file. So as users make requests, we'll start appending lines to that access log file. So we'll say const access log stream, and that's going to be equal to file system.create write stream. There it is there. And then we can say path. So we're using path now. Dot join. And we'll grab the current directory that this is running in. So dir name. And then we'll also say access.log. So basically, we're going to create an access.log file in the current directory, or we're going to use the access.log file in the current directory. Next, how do we want to use this stream? Flags A, and that means that we're going to be using this in append mode. All right, so let's go ahead and save that. Next, we want to actually use this access log stream and the Morgan package so that we're actually writing those requests. I'll show you what I mean. We can come here and say app.use, and we're going to use the Morgan middleware. And it's going to need some options. In fact, what we might do is we might initialize it here to begin with, like set it up here. And how about we call this Morgan, Morgan plugin is equal to Morgan, and we can send that combined and then an object. So now we can say the stream is going to be equal to that access log stream, okay? If you don't understand all of this, that's totally fine. You can just sort of copy what I'm doing and get the benefit from it, and then just start playing around with it and digging in later on. All right, so next thing that we're going to want to do is actually use the Morgan plugin. So we'll say app.use, okay? So this is our Express app, and we're going to use the Morgan plugin. And there we go. If we save that, we've gotten rid of all of our errors now. Let's refresh the page and see if there's any problems. We might have to restart our server. I'm going to do that just in case because we have made some significant changes here. And now what Quasar actually does is when you're running an SSR app, or when we're doing development mode, it creates this .quasar folder. And that's where the Express app is actually going to be. So if we jump into here, go into SSR, let's try refreshing the page here. And nothing is showing up. So I might have done something wrong. We've got Morgan. We installed that. We've got our SSR application up and running. Now we actually need to use the middleware. Of course. So like boot files, you actually need to tell Quasar what middleware you're using. So if we jump into quasar.conf and I search for middlewares, there we go. We want to make sure render is the last one. Otherwise, it's going to completely mess things up. And I believe we called it logger. So let's save that. And it's going to just take a while to actually start using that middleware. There we go. It's done. Refresh the page. Looks like everything was fine there. And there we go. If we jump into SSR, we now have this access log file. And if I refresh the page, notice that it is now adding new entries to the log. So this could be helpful for you building your application. Yeah, I think that's about it. The next thing I might actually show you is what that looks like when it will be on your server. So let's close this down and say Quasar build, and we'll set the mode equal to SSR. When that's done, I'm going to cd into dist, so that'll be our distribution directory. And then I'll cd into SSR, so we'll be in our SSR directory, and then I'll show you how to serve that. And this is how you would do it in production as well. So there we go, that's done building. We'll jump into that direct. Oh, you can't actually see this because my face is in the way. Can I move that to the side? There we go, I think that might have worked. So anyway, if you can't, you can listen to what I'm saying. So I'm currently sitting within this directory here. Now I'll say Quasar serve, and that's automatically going to serve this as an SSR application. So instead of going to port 8080, we'll go to port 3000. And there is our production SSR application code being served. And notice that within here, we've got our access log. So this is cool. Can I move myself around? Yeah, then I can kind of like point and go, our access log. Anyway, I'll bring myself back here. And I hope you enjoyed this one. I'll see you in the next segment. Quasar middleware is really, really cool. And I bet you a lot of the Express peeps out there are going to love this new addition. So thanks for watching. See you in the next section. I don't think there's anything more exciting than the topic of architecture. And I've always wanted somebody to talk more about these high-level concepts, but it's often hard to find without like digging into books or paying for courses, all that kind of stuff. And I just thought it'd be really cool if we talked about architecture in the context of Quasar, especially since this is what I'm doing in my day-to-day work. A lot of it is writing code. But honestly, a huge amount of it is thinking about how am I going to make sure I don't shoot myself in the foot, especially since we have large visions for what we're doing. But then on my side projects, I don't want to over-architect. Otherwise, I spend all my time on architecture and don't build the thing. Like, I don't want to think way too much about my database when it doesn't really matter, when I've just got like some users and a few, data points for them. Whereas, at work, I need to make sure I'm normalizing the database and thinking in such a way that I can keep up with new technologies without having to recreate the entire code base. So I think this is a super important topic, and especially if you're working on a project that you really care about and it's a large project and has a big long-term vision, then I think it's important to talk about these concepts. So that's what we're going to cover in this video. And hopefully you watched the Quasar Show episode 1 where we talked about architecture with different types of components. Definitely go back and check that at some point, but you should still be able to watch this video or this section of the show without it. All right, so I've blanked out a lot of stuff just to keep you intrigued. This is all about how I deal with models, basically how I deal with data and modeling data when I build applications. By the way, this is highly opinionated. You can throw out half of what I'm saying if you like, but you might find some tidbits here and there that you find particularly useful. And if you're new, please don't take everything I say as gospel. There's probably a few things that later on down the line you're going to think, well, that doesn't make sense for my use case, okay? So I just wanted to throw all of that out there. Now, for my larger projects, I always have a schema. And this is a JSON schema. And that's really important, okay? I don't have a GraphQL schema. I still build like some schemas in the database. But basically everything that I model using my JSON schema. Why would I do that? Because I know that JSON is going to stick around. Other tools will come and go, but I know that JSON is going to be there pretty much forever. And if it ends up dying and, something else takes over, like, I don't know, YAML or whatever, then I know that I can easily convert JSON into something else. That's why JSON is the core of everything I do, and I use it to create my schemas. And inside of that, it's really basic. I basically just have like fields, what the data type is for that field. So it could be like a number or a string or whatever. And the relationships and the nature of those relationships. So like belongs to many, many to many, even polymorphic relationships, they all sit inside of my schema. And there's a good reason for that, okay? It means that, let me just move this across a little bit. I use Laravel on the back end. I can now use this schema in order to create my relationships between my models. Now, full disclosure, we don't actually do this yet. I have tested it and I have got it working. But one of the problems is like you want to still have type hinting, and that can be difficult when you're basically auto-generating things based off of a schema. But anyway, that's beside the point. The idea is if I have a schema, I can now have Laravel that adheres to that schema. Then I can also have Python. So for example, when we start doing more analytics in our application, PHP isn't the best code for doing analytics stuff. Python by far, at least in my opinion, is. There's other ones like R or whatever, but now we can use Python in order to model our data using the schema. GraphQL, I can create a GraphQL schema based off of this schema, or basically just create all GraphQL stuff, like all the relationships behind it, and a lot of the work can be done using this schema. And it goes on and on. We want to use Neo4j in the future, which is a really fast database that's really great for artificial intelligence. We'll be able to use the schema for that. Other shiny new things, when something new and shiny comes out and it needs data, I've got a schema that describes it all. So the point I'm trying to make here is this. If you have a centralized way of defining the relationships behind your data. And a lot of people are just using GraphQL for that. That scares me a little bit, to be honest. That's why I do things through JSON. If you have a simple centralized way to do everything and you have it in version control, then it's easy to start building tools on top of that schema. So here are some of the other benefits to that. Let's remove this little square here. Models. So on the front end, I have classes. And on the back end, I have classes. The front end models and the back end models, for that matter, are all built off of the schema. It knows what fields it has using the schema. It knows what other models it relates to using the schema. All right. So as you can probably tell already, this means that things are I only have to put fields and relationships in these schema files. All right. So for example, user.json would have like a fields object in it, and then all of the different fields would also be objects detailing the nature of those fields. And then I can build my models using that schema. And I don't have to enter the fields again and the relationships again, right? So hopefully you're seeing the benefit here now. And it's, it's a little bit of extra work. It means that I can't just, paste my fields directly into my models. I have to find out a way to basically turn that schema into a working model. But once you've done that hard work, you only have to change everything in one place, right? This is like the single source of truth of how things connect together. All right, so moving on. Now, my models are using some libraries behind the scenes here. So I've created a plugin for my models, which basically allows me to do CRUD operations. So if I have a model like user and I say user $get, I will fetch all of the users. If I say user $create, I can create a user. If I say post $update, I can update a post. A very basic API for my CRUD operations. And the cool thing about that is I'm currently using a REST API. If I want to change it to whatever new shiny thing API, I can basically plug something else in here. So this is a pattern a lot of you are probably familiar with, where you try and keep a consistent API so that you can change the thing that's doing those actions behind the scenes. So anyway, then I use Vuex ORM, which is an object relational map behind the scenes in order to basically use all of the stuff in the schema. And all of my models are using Vuex ORM to sort of model all that in the back end. I've done a whole series on Vuex ORM if you're interested in that, so I won't go too much deeper into that concept. But basically, this means, because I know I'm doing things this way, my user can use the CRUD package in order to get the latest user, and then I can use Vuex ORM to insert that user into the quote-unquote the store or the front-end database. All right, so if I've lost you now, don't worry, just stay along for the ride. So that's the idea. We got a schema. Now I can create my front-end models and my back-end models using that schema. And for the front-end, all my models follow the exact same CRUD API, so they extend this CRUD plugin, and they all use Vuex ORM. All right, so now the cool thing about this, since I know that I'm using this RESTful CRUD API, that means that I can easily create components that accept these models. And I'll give you an example of that. The rUpdate field component. If you watch my previous video, you'll know what all this is about. But basically, this component allows me to pass through a model and then a field. So for example, maybe the name for the user. And that means that I can input the name, and the way that this component is set up, I can say, for example, when it's unfocused, automatically update it for me. And since I know that I'm always going to be using the API based on these packages here, I can do that. I can just pass through any model. It could be a user, it could be a post, it could be a comment, it could be a crop, it could be a paddock, it could be anything. And then I just say the field, and then we can go ahead and update that. So it's really sweet, a really cool way to code. And it means that your code is extremely scalable. Or at least that's what I've found. So yeah, I think that's everything. That's what I wanted to sort of cover today. What I'm doing behind the scenes in order to get, because we talked about this piece of the puzzle. This is what I do behind the scenes to make all of that work, right? Making sure that everything adheres to this schema, making sure that all my models follow this API, right? So they have the same CRUD API. They have the same API for inserting, updating data on into the store. And by doing that, I can create components that are super flexible and can accept any model that I want them to accept. So hopefully I didn't lose you on that one. Let me know what you think about these concepts. If you find them too overwhelming, then let me know, and maybe I can do simpler ones in future videos. But if you love sort of getting into the nitty gritty and this type of thing, then let me know in the comments, or maybe shoot me a message on Discord. Let me know if you think I've said some things that are stupid or some things that are awesome, and if it's helped you in any way. And yeah, we can start up a discussion. So yeah, that's my concept of using a schema. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next segment. Man, I love doing this show. This has been so much fun. You know, let me just sit down with my legs crossed. I've been on this chair for a while now. Here we go. I just want to relax a little bit and just kind of like have a little chat with you guys about something that's really important to me. So I used to think that I was just born a not very intelligent person. That's probably the nicest way to put it. But yeah, basically I kind of had problems where I always thought that people were just smarter than me. And I used to tell myself that this isn't the fact, that you know, it always felt like I was lying to myself, that there was just something about me that made me less intelligent than other people. And because of that, for some reason, I just wanted to be skilled. I wanted to be seen as someone who is skilled or talented. And what I came to realize is that if I learned stuff, a lot of different things. So like I learned piano, and I learned singing, and I learned dancing, and I learned how to make games on my computer. And I just figured if I learn a whole bunch of things, that I will appear like a talented person, you know. And I later found out that's known as a jack of all trades, a master of none, you know, kind of thing. Yeah, so anyway, I remember going off to university to study. I actually studied musical theater. A lot of you might know I played piano, but I studied music. I wanted to do musical theater most of my life. And kind of my tactic was most people that I would consider to be sharp, right, are really good at kind of just focusing in on the exact right thing. Whereas I thought of myself as a bit of a hammer. Like I would just pound away at whatever it is I was working on and work really, really hard at it. And it didn't matter if I was focusing on the right things. It was just like, if I just keep going at it and getting at it and getting at it, then things are going to work out for me, right? That was kind of like the mentality. And I think a lot of us have this a little bit, especially when we're younger and we're sort of feeling our way around in the world. And so what I came to realize though is, let me give the full story here. So when I then went off to university, learned musical theater, and I was okay at it, but I wasn't great at it, and I didn't get into the course I wanted to get into. So I thought, hey, I'm going to, learn piano for a little while, and ended up falling in love with it. But one of my problems was there are so many different ways to practice and so many pieces of advice. And this, you're probably getting this with code as well, especially if you're new. There is just so many different ways to do things, like use a REST API, use GraphQL, use React, use Vue, use Quasar, use Nuxt, use Gridsome. And, you should check this out. You should check that out. And there's so many different things that you can focus on that when I was learning piano, I would try and focus on everything. People would say, practice this way. So I'd practice that way, and then practice another way, and practice another way. And I ended up with scatterbrain. And a lot of you know what I'm talking about, where your brain just gets it doesn't know what to focus on. So you're constantly task switching, focus on this, then that, then that, then that, then that. Especially if you don't do test-driven development. And admittedly, I don't most of the time. If you're not doing TDD and you're just kind of like feeling away in the application, you'll often find that you do really well to begin with, but then your brain can't catch up anymore and you get like really scatterbrained. And that's what I used to get with piano. And I'd be sitting in the practice room, once again, bashing away, like it's like bashing away with a hammer at everything that I was doing. And I practiced more than everyone else, and that was what I relied on. Just lots and lots and lots and lots of time put into practicing. Here's what I realized though. What I realized is if you've got 100 things that you can choose, and I like to imagine this visually, like imagine you've got like 100 dots in front of you, right? They're all the different things you could learn as a developer, or like the different features you could implement, or the different bugs that you can fix. Imagine just this big board of dots, right? And inside of those dots is like a little bit of writing that says the thing that you could be focusing on. What I discovered is the key to learning things quickly. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner, an intermediate, an advanced developer. The key to learning things quickly is figuring out the what, figuring out what to focus on. In fact, the key to focus is figuring out what to focus on. So once I discovered this in the piano world, and this is like, I've talked about this in my podcast. Go to quasarcast.com/podcast, by the way, if you want to check out the podcasts that I'm working on. But one thing I discovered is from my piano teacher is that if you break things down into small chunks and you just focus on one thing at a time, then your brain can handle it and you have the chance to level up and get really good at that one thing. And then if you're very diligent about that, the next step becomes really obvious, and it's the cure to scatterbrain. All right? In fact, let me say that again. The cure to scatterbrain is figuring out what to focus on. The cure to scatterbrain is figuring out what to focus on. So anyway, I learned this with piano, and all of a sudden I went from learning like this, right? Because I used to plateau all the time, to learning like this. Now, whenever I plateau in life, whether that be for coding, whether that be for any other lesson that I'm learning, even relationships, whenever I plateau, it's because I'm trying to focus on too many things, usually. And I just need to focus on one thing at a time and put all of my attention into that one thing. All right, so let me see if I can give you an example in the coding world. So with coding, you could think to yourself, well, all right, I know that I'm going to learn Vue.js, and I know that I want to learn Vue 3. I'm going to focus on the composition API now. So you've now taken, it's almost like taken something this big and narrowed it down to there. You're now focusing on the composition API. But then I would go one step further and then say, okay, what about the composition API? How about you'd say, for example, how do I deal with props? And then you've got one tiny thing that you can focus on. Or how do I deal with modeling data, so references? And then once again, you've got one thing to focus on. So I really believe that this is the key to leveling up on a consistent basis. If you're the kind of person that plateaus often, like I used to plateau in everything. And whenever I'd plateau, I'd just find something else that I can get good at. So I felt good about myself. When in reality, I was just being mediocre at everything. If you feel like you're mediocre at things, if you feel like you're mediocre at development and you don't know how to level up and get to the next stage, you need to master the art of figuring out your what. No matter how long it takes, even if you have to sit down for an hour and do research to figure out what your next what is, figure out your what and then channel all of your focus into that one thing. A lot of people will say, I don't know how to focus. I'm bad at focusing, or I'm not very smart because I can't focus. I'm not a good focuser. The truth is not that people are bad at focusing. It's that people aren't so good at figuring out their what. When you think about it, people who can't focus just have too many things that they're trying to work on. But if you can narrow it down to that one thing, then all of a sudden it becomes much easier. You just go, well, I just focus on that one thing. Obviously there's a little bit more nuance to this, but that's the basic principle. Figure out your what and everything becomes a whole lot easier. All right, so hopefully you found this useful. I really enjoy doing the Quasar show. And hey, if you love this kind of stuff, if you love learning through videos, go to quasarcast.com/register. Currently, all the videos I do there are free. However, there will be a paywall, but the idea is all of the basics for Quasar are going to be freely available forever. And then I'll start digging into more advanced concepts. When I start doing that content, there will be a monthly subscription. It'll probably be 15 Australian dollars a month. I don't know what that is in your currency. And to begin with, all of that money will be funneled into Quasar, into the development of Quasar. And then once I'm happy with how much money is going into the open source community for Quasar, then I'll start paying myself. So that's my mentality. I want to give back to the framework. Check out quasarcast.com/register. Have a look at my other stuff if you're interested. And thank you so much for giving me your attention. I don't take it lightly. I'm really grateful. I wouldn't be here doing a second episode if it weren't for the fact that you guys were so engaging and so kind to me in the comments in all these videos. So thank you so much. And I will see you next time for episode 3 of The Quasar Show. My name is Luke Diebold. I'm part of a group of web developers that build high-performance view apps in record time with a framework called Quasar. We don't spend months on designs that take years to test and end up confusing our customers. We use the material design spec because we already know that it works. Since we're community-driven, we have to be smarter than corporate frameworks. We do this by insisting on top-class web components, striving to use best practices, and pushing ourselves to raise the bar of what's possible on the web. Most component libraries do one thing and leave you to figure out the rest. We have a vision that is much, much bigger. An unparalleled experience building front-end apps that work on all platforms. We are Quasar developers, and there is nothing we can't build. Hey guys, just a quick message to finish up. Check out quasarcast.com/register if you like learning through videos. I love building videos. This is my passion in life, and I'd love to help you get started with Quasar. I'm currently working on a Getting Started series, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff on the website that you can explore in the meantime. Also, we've got 3 podcasts. One of them released, 2 of them that will be released soon. The one that's released is Quasar Life, and that's basically me talking about the mindset of being a developer and some of the stuff I've learned day to day being a developer. Then there'll be the Quasar News podcast and Quasar Devs, where we'll be interviewing Quasar devs in the community. And just want to finish up by saying, please consider donating. I mean, it just helps these guys so much, and I, for one, are super grateful that so many thousands of hours have been put into this open source project. It honestly boggles my mind. So do consider donating if you can, and I will see you in episode 3 of the Quasar Show. Thanks so much for watching.